Hello and welcome to the United on Wheels podcast. I am your hostess with the mostest, Paul Amadeus Lane, and I am so delighted to have you on our show today. We are going to be joined by one of the premier voices when it comes to mental health for our disabled community. We're going to find out about her journey, her career, and how she is empowering others who are having some mental challenges out there. But before we bring her on and welcome her, go to our website, unitedspinal.org. Why? Because there are so many great things happening on our website, in particular, our Strong Will Together campaign. And you have an opportunity to submit nominations for individuals with spinal cord injuries or disorders excelling in different areas such as arts, sports, entrepreneurship, youth leadership. You can help us to spread the word about being strong-willed together. And on our website there are so many resources there as well. If you are in business, you can take our corporate challenge. You can do so many things that we want to highlight some of the great things happening at unitedspinal.org. Back in March, there was an amazing story that was posted on our website. It was entitled, "Don't Let a Bad Experience Keep You from Tapping into the Benefits of Therapy." When it comes to mental health and challenges in our community, let's face it, sometimes we don't take the steps necessary to get the help. Maybe because of some biases that we have about mental health. Maybe some preconceived notions that our friends and family may have about mental health. But whatever the challenges are, we should not let that prevent us from getting the help that we need. And our next guest is going to talk about her experience. I am so delighted to have with me right now my next guest. She and I are both on the Tech Access group here at United Spinal. We're talking about the amazing, the awesome Michaela Devins. Michaela, what's up? How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So great to be able to chat with you, Michaela. Before I brought you on, I talked about just the importance of your voice, not only when it comes to our Tech Access community, but also just the community as a whole, because you have a lot of just insight when it comes to mental health, and especially when we're part of the disabled community and how important our mentals are. So just being able to have you on is going to be really, really awesome. So Michaela, before we talk about mental health issues in our community, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience out there, ones who may not be familiar with you?
Sure. So I'm originally from the Adirondacks, way up in upstate New York. For people who aren't familiar, I usually say that it's about an hour south from Montreal, so practically Canada. I was injured in 2010. I had a diving accident and sustained an injury at C4, C5 incomplete, and have been quadriplegic and a power wheelchair user ever since. In that time, I've gone back to school. I got married, because of my husband's career path, moved to Philly for 4 years, and now find myself in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So it's been quite the road, but that's a little bit about me, just kind of off the cuff.
That's cool. So Michaela, you went from a New York Giants fan to a Philadelphia Eagles fan to now a New England Patriots fan. Is that right?
I mean, to each of the people in those respective cities, yes.
There you go.
In truth, I'm not a sports fan really at all, but I will never forget being in Philadelphia when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Yeah. It was wild. Oh my God. They had greased the lamp poles so that people wouldn't climb them, but they climbed them anyway. So, that's Philly. But I got free coffee they were giving away free stuff because everyone in the city was just so excited. So I was like, hey, for today, if it means free coffee, I'm an Eagles fan.
I love it. I love it. And Michaela, when you first got injured, what were some of the things that you had to come to grips with when you realized that things were going to change for you?
Yeah, I feel like in the early weeks when I finally sort of came out of my drug-induced stupor, I kept thinking this is going to be, a couple months at most, like I kept seeing people at the rehab hospital and being like, well, they're here and they're working on walking or they're using their hands. So like, it can't be that bad, right? Like that must be what it's going to be like for me. And then having discussions with my mom and meetings with my care team, it slowly dawned on me that like, oh no, this is going to be a lot longer than that, potentially lifelong. So that was a really tough realization. And then from that point on, I was very depressed. But, and that'll tie into, I'm sure, some of our conversation today, but I'm really, really fortunate that I had a support system that encouraged me and bolstered me, and a mother who, even if at the time I hated that she was doing it, she was always pushing me, constantly pushing me, never letting me become idle or just kind of wallow. She just was a real energizing force in my life in those, especially in those early years.
Now, I get that, Michaela, because hearing your experience, it took me back to my experience. I'm going on 30 years next January. And I kind of remember, too, when I first got injured, I was thinking, oh, it'll be a few months and I'll be all right. Because you hear these stories about ones who are, recuperating and coming back from a spinal cord injury. And then when that didn't happen, that's when kind of reality comes in and you deal with the depression. And then my mom, she was the one too, really trying to encourage me and push me as well. And my dad and family as well. So I definitely get that. And Michaela, what helped you mentally during that time to kind of, deal with the mental challenges that you were now facing?
Yeah, I mean, during that time, I really relied on my support system in a big way. My boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, my closest friends that really were with me every step of the way, my family. I come from a very small town, a very tight-knit community. And so folks in my own community were really supportive of my family and I during those early years. So I think in all of that, just knowing that even if I felt like I was alone, I wasn't alone. But then, I didn't necessarily cope in a lot of ways. I struggled with anxiety and depression pretty severely after my injury for the first couple of years. And part of what helped was the community. Part of what helped was just continuing to move forward. My mom was always looking for new opportunities for rehab, going back to school, just staying busy to keep my mind occupied. But in those, especially the early months, I just watched hours and hours of TV. I cried all the time, and I would save it for in the middle of the night or when I was alone. Like, I didn't want other people to see that I was struggling as much as I was. Also because I felt like they were all working so hard to try to help me. And it felt like in some ways I couldn't show them that I was still having such a hard time. and I look back on that now, and I wish that I had been more open about my struggles. But at the time, I didn't have any sort of language about mental health and what that meant. And mental health was something that was still very much stigmatized in my life, just because I didn't know any better. And I don't think anyone in my community or family or anyone else really knew anybody better either. It was just like, keep going, keep taking it a day at a time, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, keep praying, and you'll be okay. And while I think that's true to a certain extent, I think that the depth of my suffering wouldn't have been as much as it was if I had a language and a name to put to what I was experiencing, as well as some professional help. I think those things I know they would have helped immensely. But everyone has to have their own journey toward those things, right? So I certainly don't look back and judge myself or my family members for not knowing better. I just can recognize that that's where we were in this journey.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. And I think many ones who are listening and watching to our discussion, Michaela, I think that definitely resonates with them, because just the pendulum of emotions that we go through, and especially if there's a stigma when it comes to mental health, because of our community, because of family, it can really wreak havoc on you. And I definitely, just I'm so glad that we're having this conversation about mental health and why it's a component that we have to deal with on top of, the physical challenge that we have as well. And Michaela, when you finally decided to maybe use your experience and use your voice to help others in our community, what did that epiphany kind of look like? When did you shift from, now I want to help others who may have these same type of challenges? If you don't mind sharing that with us.
Yeah, that really came about over a long period of years, as well as my own personal journey with therapy and my professional journey. So it all kind of ended up converging. But, I've struggled with anxiety and depression my entire life. I can look back at moments in really every period of my life, childhood, preteen years, high school, college, all of it, post-injury, and identify depressive episodes and disordered thinking and generalized, features of generalized anxiety. And so these things have always been with me, but the injury certainly heaped on a whole new level of stress and trauma that made everything worse. And I wasn't really very well equipped to deal with that. And then, I felt like I had been pushing through. And then my husband and I got married in January of 2015. And it was my first time since the injury living on my own, so to speak, or living outside of my parents' home, where I had, for sure, 24-hour support. My mom was my primary caregiver, and I wanted to know that we could do this as a couple, that we could be independent and successful. And at the same time, I was terrified. I mean, it was such a learning curve, and I was navigating, coordinating all of my own care, and just trying to figure out what life this way was supposed to look like, even though it was 5 years after my injury. That transition was really difficult, and I found that I was having panic attacks pretty regularly. And that was tough. And my husband one morning mentioned to me, have you thought about therapy? And I was like, what did you just say to me? Because in my mind, it was like, therapy is for crazy people. How can he possibly be suggesting this?
Mm-hmm.
Does he think that I'm weak? Like, does he think I'm failing? And thankfully, Kyle and I have a very open communication style. So I said as much. And I was like, do you think I'm crazy? And he was like, no, but it's pretty clear that you're struggling and I don't know how to help. I don't know what else to do. And after the initial sort of outrage and anger wore off, I thought to myself, yeah, maybe I should give that a try again. My only other experience with therapy was in rehab when I was inpatient immediately after my injury, and it was not a good experience. So, that was the other thing, was like, I've tried therapy. It doesn't work. It doesn't do anything for anyone. Based on that one very short experience with one clinician. But I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. So I got set up with someone. I started that journey. I remember after the first session feeling like, oh my God, that's what therapy is supposed to be like. Okay, I get it now. And yeah, it just started this whole journey of building insight and relearning my mind and my body in a way that I hadn't before. This led to this idea of like, do people know about this? Other people should know about this, right? Which of course they did, but it felt like there's got to be more. And also that I wasn't set up with resources following my injury. So it felt to me like a really large gap in care. And also that like, I want to tell everybody how great therapy is, I did my undergrad degree in music education and vocal performance. My injury was the summer after my junior year, and I dropped vocal performance because of some damage to my vocal cords. But I finished with the education degree, and then I sort of shifted into literacy education. And so around the same time that I was beginning this journey with my own mental health, I was working with kids one-on-one or in small groups and constantly feeling like we can't get to the actual learning because they're anxious or because they're dealing with something at home or because they have ADHD and they need better ways to feel focused and engaged with the material. And so I felt like I was constantly trying to get to matters of mental health with my students and not realizing it, just thinking that like they need support beyond just learning letters and learning how to read and write. So, all around the same time, it sort of culminated in this experience of tutoring a student who was a wheelchair user and having really candid conversations with him about what that life is like, about how hard it was for him in school to not feel like an outsider. And we would just have these conversations before we did our actual tutoring. And it felt really meaningful. And his parents were constantly telling me, like, you have such an impact on him. Like, we're so thankful the school district matched you with him. And it all sort of culminated with like, oh, I think I want to be a therapist. So it's a long road and it took many years. But once I was decided on that path, that was it.
I love it. I love it, Michaela, because you really unpacked a lot of biases that ones have when it comes to therapy and your own experience, especially when your husband asks you if you needed therapy because, them fighting words, right? In the marriage, right? Like, what are you talking about?
I was like, excuse you.
Yeah, so I'm glad you shared that, because if maybe our family members approach us and say, hey, you need some therapy, we we should let our guard down and not think that they're saying that we are crazy and that we need some help in dealing with things. And that's one thing that really changed my view of therapy. Was I love my 600-pound wife. I watched that show, Dr. Now. I love it. And when I saw the different challenges that ones were having on that show and how different therapists were able to help them out, like Dr. Paradise and Lola and others would help the different patients, and the way they would have conversations and how they would have a breakthrough and be able to overcome different things that were preventing that had these barriers from them moving forward and making progress.
Yes.
And when I started to see that, I was like, this is something we need to talk about more, because it's something that we need to do as humans, but especially the disabled community, because we spend a lot of time working on our physical rehabilitation that we don't spend time in our mental rehabilitation, that we need to do, because some of these mental challenges that we've had was there before the accident or before the injury that we need to come to grips with. What was it about therapy, Michaela, that when you sat down and was able to chat with your medical professional, that you said, wow, I should have did this a long time ago, or this is something that could have really helped me out with XYZ?
She was able to, this first therapist, and I'll call her my first therapist because I don't count that first time at rehab.
I'm with you on that.
She was able to reflect my own thoughts back at me in a way that made me consider them differently. So when it comes to anxiety, I had a lot of fearful thoughts, a lot of spiraling, sort of snowballing thoughts where one fear would lead to another, would end in catastrophe. I now realize it's literally called catastrophizing thinking. And she was able to kind of pick it apart and reflect aspects of it back to me, where I was like, yeah, I don't know where that fear came from, or I know where the fear came from, but I don't have any evidence or rationale as to why I'm even afraid of that. Or I could spend time being fearful of this, but in the long run, is it actually going to change anything? Is it going to have any real impact on my life? And so what are some ways that I can then reframe those thoughts, shift the perspective so that I'm looking at things more realistically or in a more positive light, or creating a narrative that will allow me to move forward with as much peace as possible. So she was able to use one of the sort of basic skills of therapy in a really expert way, which is that reflective listening and validating, and then being able to act as a sounding board and to reflect things back at the client. And that process was something that was new to me, because everyone says that they're a good listener, but until you're in a room with a therapist who's really listening in a reflective way and picking out the threads and the themes and helping you to kind of unravel what's at the heart of it all. I feel like that was the first time I was like, wow, she really listens to me. That was really important.
And what's that old saying, Michaela? We do twice as much as listening than talking, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and most people are listening to respond. They're thinking of their response as they're listening, rather than actually listening to what the other person is saying.
Yeah. You can always tell when the person does that, because when they say, excuse me, what'd you say? Can you repeat that? As you guys they're formulating their own thoughts, and they're not really listening. So I'm glad you shared that, Michaela, because that is so true. And how does it feel now, Michaela, to use your experience, your expertise, your education to now to be able to help others who may be going through some very challenging situations in their life where they need some help as well.
Yeah, it's honestly one of the greatest privileges of my life. And I truly mean that. Because when you work with and care about people, to build those relationships with folks, to see the real impact that your work together can have on their life, it's indescribable. And you will never know the full extent, like the full ripple effects of what that work might accomplish, how that might ripple out from their life into other lives. And that's true for any helping profession or any kindness given or genuine relationship, right? Is that you can never see the end of that work. And I think that's just something that I always have in the back of my mind, that even if I'm having a bad day or a day where I feel like I'm a terrible therapist or I'm stressed, I ground myself with that, this work is really important and we'll never know the full effect. But just seeing people's strength and resilience over and over and over again reminds me of my own. Seeing their humanity and their the moments when they're able to be vulnerable with me reminds me of my own humanity and my own vulnerabilities. And so I'm deeply touched and affected by this work in ways that I don't think my clients understand either. The people that I work with, I will keep in my heart for my whole life. There are clients that I worked with when I first started or when I was doing internships in grad school that I still think about, and I still wish them well wherever they are, whatever they're doing. So it's a very, to have that proximity to someone's life, to hear them share things with you that maybe they've not shared with anyone else ever, for them to trust you with that. I take it as a great honor and a great privilege. And it's work that I truly love doing. And sort of selfishly, helping others helps me to, not forget my own problems, but to put them in perspective, to be able to know that I'm not alone, to, maybe something that felt like a mountain is brought into focus more. I can see it more clearly for what it is, just because of the work that I'm doing, because of, the narratives and the stories of the people that I work with. So, yeah, it's really wonderful work. And, there was another part when I was thinking of getting into counseling, was that a huge part of me felt like, what are areas of work that I can do as a quad? And to me, this felt like a natural fit, because I was like, yeah, I can sit and talk with people. I can do some notes, so that was something that, naturally kind of fit in with my search for potential careers. But I am also just very fortunate that I feel really passionately about it, and I love it.
No, I love it, Michaela, because I feel the same way when I was trying to find a new career path, because before I was a musician, songwriter, EMT, and I was like, I can't do that anymore. So what can I do? I said, well, I can talk and have a big mouth, so I'll be in the media. I'll do that, and it's something that out of a necessity, how we can find different career paths, out there that we really accelerate in and are exceptionally like yourself. And that's really gratifying to hear that, Michaela, because you and I have known each other for about a year and a half, I want to say, being in the Tech Access group, and I've never heard your story, and I'm inspired by by what you have gone through. And I know in our community, we sometimes frown at people being inspirations, but I'd rather us inspire people than make people feel bad and discourage people. So, just what you've been able to do, and been able to help others, that's truly exceptional, because this is a need that we have in our community that we need to talk up more and more and more about, because mental health and mental challenges that we face, it's real. And sometimes we need to take those mental health days to just pause and reflect and just get our mind right.
Absolutely. And I agree with you about, I think inspiration or inspirational is like a loaded term for the disability community. But if I've done something that you feel genuinely inspired by, then yes, by all means. I don't want to be considered inspirational for leaving my apartment, right? I think that's like where the rub lies.
I agree.
I'm not inspirational just because I'm in a wheelchair. But if there are, things that I am able to do or accomplish that are genuinely inspirational to others, then I welcome that. Yeah.
I'm so glad you shared it. And spoken from a therapist, I'm glad. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's why we have the professionals on here to talk. And something that you and I are a part of, we kind of mentioned it in the beginning, the Tech Access Group, and just the social impact and what it does for us mentally to be able to use technology to be independent is something that you and I are very passionate about, especially for our community out there.
Yes.
And how important it is for them to use technology. And if you don't mind, just speak to that if you don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, I've said before that I cannot imagine a better time to be disabled, except maybe in the future. Because we have so much available to us now by means of technology that it facilitates independence in a way that disabled folks before us just have not had. The fact that I can basically control my entire life from my computer and my phone is amazing. It allows me so much independence in running my household, in being able to successfully do my work, right? So I think that technology intersects with employment, with mental health, right? Because if technology allows you to be employed, and you enjoy the work that you do, and you're not, spending those 6 or 8 or 9 hours of your day, just trying to sort of push out your troubles with TV right? Like that's important for mental health. Of course, too much work is not good either, but, technology allows for, and assistive technology specifically allows for recreation and community building, which is important to form peer support networks, to have, communication with others, and learn things from the community that you might not have known otherwise. As far as recreation and social health is concerned as well, like being able to play video games because of, the quad stick, or having the Xbox adaptive kit, or being able to play Words with Friends on your phone or your iPad, right? Like all of these things are really, really important to the whole picture of a life. And I think especially for disabled folks, because, online banking or, any of these other things that we talked about, folks that are non-disabled might be able to access these things with or without technology. But there are some things that, like for us, we don't have the option. We couldn't access it without technology. So I just think it's important in literally every aspect of our life. And if we can get tech companies to sit up and take notice and to listen to our perspectives and incorporate them into product design and literally every aspect of whatever they are selling, or coming up with, I think that much better for all of us. Yeah.
And I know back in March, you wrote an article for United Spinal about bad experiences, not letting bad experience really, I guess, I don't want to misquote the title, but it's talking about bad experience, not let it, kind of define you. And we're so happy that you were able to pin those thoughts to a post and to a story that we all desperately need, and how everything can cross pollinate with each other when it comes to disability, mental health, tech, and all the other great things that we do out there. And in closing, what has it meant to be a part of United Spinal Association? I know you're in the Boston chapter up there. So talk about just the importance of that, because maybe ones are listening and watching right now who maybe this is their first introduction to United Spinal Association. And why don't you kind of share your thoughts about being a part of that organization?
Yeah. In two words, it has meant immediate community. I moved from Philadelphia to Boston in June of 2020, which was a very difficult time to move. I was feeling really isolated. I had left my job in Philly so that we could move. I did not have work yet. I was spending a lot of time alone. The transition was really difficult. I left behind a place that I had built up support systems over 4 years, and moving to a new state and navigating new state systems and getting care. It just was a very overwhelming time. And that was around the time that I joined the Greater Boston chapter, and through their virtual groups, I had this immediate sense of community. I had a place where people held space for me, and were also able to give me tips and resources and to commiserate with me. And, so having that group felt like finding family in a time when I was very isolated. And I, will continue to be involved with the chapter as long as I'm here in Boston. I'm a peer mentor with them. I also do run a group for women with spinal cord injuries. And it's been wonderful. And, then meeting the broader community, the way that the chapters connect, and, we have this sort of broader connection through United Spinal as a whole, I think is just, it's wonderful. And that's a really important part of mental health too, is having that peer support. And having a network of peer support can make a huge difference. So, I'm very thankful to the local chapter. I think they do a fantastic job. And my life has been and continues to be just so enriched because of their influence. So,
and we have been enriched by your influence. All of us here at the United Spinal Association. Michaela, you have been a bright spot, a wonderful voice, and just an all-around great colleague and individual out there. We really appreciate all that you have done and will continue to do with us at United Spinal. And before I let you go, any closing thoughts?
Just thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. That was very nice. And I just really enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you. And the feeling is definitely mutual. So please stay well and stay safe, my friend.
You too.
Really enjoyed my chat with the awesome, the amazing Michaela Devins. Michaela and I, again, we sit on the Tech Access group together. helping to make technology accessible for all. And I'm so delighted to call her a friend and also to be associated with her. And I love her balanced view of what it means to be an inspiration. If we do something that is inspirational, I'm cool with it too. But just me getting out in the house and rolling down the street, if you feel it's inspirational, that's you and your joy. I'm not going to steal your joy, how you feel about it. But I'm so glad the way she helped to have a balanced view of that, as well as when it comes to mental health as well. So really enjoyed our chat with the amazing Michaela Devins. Don't forget, go to our website. Why? Because we are strong-willed together. And don't forget our Strong-Willed Together campaign and how you can nominate ones for different awards that we have out there. Individuals that's excelling in art, sports, entrepreneurship, youth leadership. You can participate in our Strong-Willed Together awards that we have to recognize them. And don't forget all the great resources on our website. You can find out more about the Strong-Willed Together events, and other events out there, how you can take action, how you can take the corporate challenge, how you can partner with us, and ways that you can give, because we are a charitable organization and we always love help out there. So don't forget to join us. Until next time, friends, please stay healthy, stay safe, and remember, I love you guys to life. Take care.